high above the known world where the clouds grew thin and the wind no longer remembered how to rush, there hovered a strange and silent place called Tidesmoke Spire. It didn't rest on mountaintops or rise from the sea. It floated alone in the open air, its base forever shrouded by wandering fog banks that curled and stretched like sleeping thoughts. The spire was slender, made of dark iron threaded with glowing veins of silver glass. No bridges led to it, no stairways wrapped its base. It drifted by itself in the sky, a quiet shape against the stars, glowing faintly like an ember hidden in mist. Inside lived Quen, the alchemist. He was neither old nor young, with silvering hair and soft eyes behind clouded glasses. His tunic was lined with pockets of small tools and folded paper. Around him, hundreds of instruments ticked, hummed, and whispered, not in chaos, but in harmony. Everything in the spire had its rhythm. Even the air pulsed with intention. Quen didn't work to change the world. He didn't seek gold, nor fame, nor miracles. He sought a single thing, the answer to a question that no longer had words, only a shape inside him, soft, circular, and unfinished. Each night, as the stars blinked awake beyond the dome overhead, Quen would lean over his workbench, press a hand gently to the echo table, and murmur, "Tonight, bring me one piece more of what I've lost." And something deep in the spire, a soft chime, a spark, a hum, would respond. The search would begin again. Asterisk on this particular night, with both moons resting low and fog curling thick beneath the spire. Quen reached for a small flask etched with silver filigree. Inside, dream seed resin. He warmed the flask carefully over a slow breath flame, waiting for the resin to melt into mist. When the first curl of vapor rose, he leaned in. It shimmered violet, then silver, and began to shape itself. Not into letters, not into a face, into feeling. The mist formed a slow-moving spiral, tight and trembling, not sorrow, not joy, but something in between. Longing. Quen's breath caught. The mist was responding. He carefully guided it toward the open intake of the echo engine, a curious device that translated emotional residue into traceable memory. The engine flickered, spun, then sang, a soft, synthetic hum that built into a voice. Familiar, quiet. Quen, why are you still trying? His heart shuddered. The voice was hers. Not a recording, not imagination, memory reaching. She had been here once, long ago. a partner in silence, a friend in curiosity. She left no name behind, only laughter, and the outline of closeness that never quite closed. "Please," Quen whispered to the mist, "show me more." But the vapor faltered, then fell away, vanishing like breath on glass. The echo engine dimmed, and the spire was still again. Quen stood motionless for a long time, his eyes tracing the curves of the lab as if trying to find her in the shadows. The stars outside blinked, patient. He turned back to his bench and reached for a fresh crystal slate. Tonight, he would try something new. Sleep in Tidesmoke was optional. Quen often chose to stay awake, not out of duty, but because each hour whispered, "Stay, you're nearly there." His fingers trembled slightly as he inscribed the formula on the new slate. Lines twisted, broke, rejoined, forming a shape he had chased through dozens of sleepless nights. Tonight's glyphs weren't sharp. They were curved, soft, like memory soft by distance. At the center of the design, one final mark remained: the glyph of recall. A symbol for not just remembering facts, but returning to the feeling of what was once whole. His hand paused over it. He had drawn it before, many times, always erasing it. Tonight, he pressed it down. The glyph glowed faintly. The entire formula lifted from the slate in hovering lines, suspended in air like a spider web woven from light. Quen moved slowly to the moon crucible, a tall, transparent chamber where thought met reaction. He fed the slate into the crucible. It began to turn. The lights in the lab dimmed. Then, with a shimmer, the crucible produced something new. A silver orb, no larger than an apple, flickering softly with internal light. He reached for it, as his fingers brushed the orb's surface. It bloomed, not in brightness, but in memory. Faint sounds filled the room. A desk, a laugh, the rhythm of a voice reading aloud, a warmth beside him, then a long silence, a goodbye without words. The orb pulled, then cracked. Its light scattered across the floor in droplets of memory. Quen stood still as they touched his shoes, his workbench, his coat. He whispered, "Why did you go?" But the room only answered with silence. Asterisk beneath the spire, accessible only when the fog thinned. Just so lay the vault of resonance, a chamber built not for storage, but for listening. Quen descended carefully. In his palm, he carried the final shard of the broken orb. The vault opened with a soft hiss, revealing shelves of memory threads, long coils of sound, soft recordings preserved in crystal dot. At its center stood a pedestal, quiet and waiting. Quen placed the shard upon it, a soft hum, then a flicker, then her voice. If you're hearing this, you've remembered. I hoped you would. I left not because I wanted to Quen, but because I couldn't carry the question anymore. It was too heavy for two people. I became part of the drift, watching from the fog. You never stopped searching. I never stopped hoping. The answer was never in your notes. It was always in your stillness. You don't need to finish the formula. You need to forgive yourself. The light dimmed. The message ended, and Quen, the patient alchemist of the sky, sat beside the pedestal, not thinking, not scribbling, just being dot above him. The crucibles stilled. The lab held its breath. For once, nothing asked anything of him. Dot asterisk morning in the sky did not arrive with blinding light or golden blade. It came in quiet grays, a softening of stars, a thinning of shadow, a hush that fell like a woolen blanket across the spire. Quen stood at the highest balcony, looking out over the endless drift. The fog that had once felt like a barrier now moved like a slow tide, curling in elegant waves below the glass deck. It didn't press or pull, it simply moved, and in doing so, it reminded him that time flowed whether or not you held on to it. Dot in his left hand. A warm cup of mist leaf tea, untouched. Dot in his right. A small vial sealed with silver wax. Inside it, a wisp of memory hovered, not a fixed shape, not a face or a voice, but a presence, familiar, gentle, alive. It had formed not from any experiment, but from surrender. Quen did not want to preserve her. He wanted to acknowledge her and all that she was when she had been near. He placed the vial down beside the worn books on the ledge, a stack of half-read journals, some in her handwriting, others in his all dog-eared. At the corners they loved best. The soft glass clink of the vial made the books seem more alive, as if their pages exhaled. He turned back to the lab. For years, this room had pulsed with intention. Equations scrawled in neat spirals, vials aligned by color density, memory charts that mapped fog patterns against lunar drift. He had tried to recreate what was lost, like chasing a star that had already fallen. But now, the tools were quiet. The stillness wasn't emptiness, it was completion. A soft chime rang through the dome, not from an alarm or a reaction, but from the spire itself, a harmonic, subtle and low. like a temple bell heard from miles away. Quen closed his eyes. The wind stirred. He thought he might feel her there, not standing beside him, not whispering in his ear, but folded into the air, present in the hush, part of the rhythm. He opened a window pane, letting the breeze sweep gently through the chamber. The fog rolled in, curling around the pillars and lights, kissing the stones and warming the floor. He didn't shiver, he welcomed it. And in that moment, with the spire aglow in the muted morning, with the lab wrapped in mist and memory, Quen understood he had never been building toward an answer. He had been building a place where questions were allowed to rest. He stepped back, set down his tea, and sat cross-legged on the floor. No notebook, no formula, just breath. He placed his hands on his knees and let the silence return, not to wait for something, but to simply exist. Above him, the fog cleared just enough to reveal the stars still faint in the west, lingering, not yet gone. He smiled. Let them stay a little longer. Let everything stay just as it is.